And welcome everybody. This is a webinar on the Fontaine 29 Interchange project. And this is basically for VDOT Chuck to explain some changes to the project design. I'll share my screen, which has some pictures of the design, and Chuck, you can go ahead and it's all yours.
Okay, thanks everybody for being here today. This was the original concept that was submitted last round for smart scale. And the cost of this project after escalation was $21 million. It didn't fare well in smart scale. So we basically spent a good portion of this past probably 8-9 months trying to come up with some other options that we might be able to address some of the concerns here at a lesser cost. And recently the L&D and traffic engineering, they finally came to consensus on the final concept, and that's what we sent out early last month for consideration. And this is the DDI. The new one is the CFI. And if you could show those, this is the first piece of it. It has less right-of-way impact. It has less earthwork. We don't disturb the ramps on the southbound side, and there's less impact on the ramps on the northbound side. So we were able to bring the cost down. It also the other one required multiple stormwater management ponds, which this one doesn't. The other one also impacted wetlands, which this one doesn't. It still provides similar benefits as the DDI at a significantly reduced cost. So that's why we wanted to propose it as an alternate solution to the DDI, as it provides the same benefit with a lot less cost. So what it does is, if you're coming westbound from Charlottesville, you would actually, at your approach to the northbound ramps, you would have a stoplight for the one movement. If you're just continuing through the interchange and going west towards Buckingham Circle or the reservoir, you could go straight through. If you want to get onto 29 South, you would stop at the stoplight, and then when it turned green, you would cross over the eastbound lanes, travel to the ramp, and go up the ramp like you normally would. If you want to travel east from 29 South, you would still make the right turn maneuvers. We have two lanes. One, the inside lane would go directly into the university, and the middle lane would be a choice lane. You could either go into the city or go into the university, either one, and it would be signalized. The outside lane would not be signalized except for pedestrian crossings. There is a pedestrian crossing and a shared use path that runs down the middle of the road and crosses, as you can see, on both ramps on the south side of the interchange. If you want to go, if you're heading eastbound from the lake or from the reservoir or Buckingham Circle and you want to go northbound on the 250, or if you're coming northbound on 29 and you want to go west towards Buckingham Circle or the reservoir, you would have to go through the interchange. And if you show the next slide, to the Ray Hunt Drive, and then you would have to make a U-turn and come back through and either go north on 29 or head west towards the reservoir or Buckingham Circle. And those are the main modifications between the two. Is basically those two things. The DDI crosses you over, but this only crosses over the movement that's going towards 29 South as opposed to both lanes. And that's pretty much the differences between the two. And I was hoping if I could answer questions. This concept is significantly less cost. It's about, I think the latest numbers, L&D is refining the cost estimates, but we're down to about, in today's cost, somewhere around $9 million. Versus today's cost for the DDI is up around $21 million. There's a significant difference because of a lot of the impacts that the DDI has on the surrounding properties and the added features or added items it has to add because you have to have the deflection on both approaches to actually make it work. This new concept operates similarly as the DDI, and it will give us a good level of service well into beyond 2040. So that's pretty much all I really have, and I would like to be able to take questions and provide many answers as I can for most of the rest of the webinar.
I had to unmute myself. So if you would like to ask a question, you can raise your hand or you can type it in the chat box. And see, okay, Rebecca White has her hand up. So Rebecca, go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, could you please go back to the previous slide?
I think it's that one. That's the new design, right?
Yes, that one right there. I just have a few clarification questions and then I'll post everything else in the chat. But when you're coming on the bypass northbound and you get down to the bottom of the ramp at Fontaine, I understand the two inside lanes and how one of them's straight through, one of them has a signal. It appears that if you try to turn left right there, you're going to be routed directly back onto the bypass headed the opposite direction. Is that a needed movement? Number one. I mean, am I seeing that correctly?
Yes, you are seeing that correctly. That is, if you go to the second slide or the next, the reason we have that movement here, if you look up in the right-hand corner, we're going to close this ramp. So you've got the northbound 29 to westbound 64 connection. We've had a lot of crashes at that location. And when we looked at the 64 interchange previously, the cost for those improvements, of all the improvements, was like $175 million to reconfigure this interchange. What we're doing with this project is we're routing that movement through this interchange.
Oh.
So those vehicles that would be making that movement will now come down this ramp, go around and go right back up and get on 64 west.
Okay, that makes sense. So of course it's all tractor, that's a pretty heavy.
It's large volume of large vehicle, yes.
Okay, so thank you. Another clarification, you spoke of bike and pedestrian connections from the west set to the east and the east to the west, basically on Fontaine Avenue. I do know we have a few bike commuters right now that live back there and they bike through here. Could you walk through that clarification a little bit?
Okay, right now there's a asphalt path that runs on the south side of Fontaine Avenue, and it basically terminates at the interchange. And what most of the people do now, they have to cross from the south side to the north side, and they walk down the wide gravel shoulder of the road to get to the other side of the interchange. What this project will do is it will provide crosswalks on the northbound, at the northbound ramp crossing to the center of the island. If you look at the typical section right in the middle of the screen, there's going to be a 13-foot path, shared use path. in the middle with barrier on both sides of it. That'll run along the median to the west side of the interchange. If you go back to the previous slide.
Yeah, I was gonna say, could you trace it with your cursor so we could kind of see it?
Okay, do you want me to change slides?
Well, just show her where it goes right here. It's on the bottom of the screen, the path. See right there where it runs along the edge of 29 or Fontaine Avenue.
Is it this blue line?
No, the shared use path, right next to the road.
Yeah, the green, the little hooky dooky thing. Yeah, right there.
Right there. That's the shared use path. The crosswalks are right there. And then it goes to the median where those two purple lines are. And then it follows the median all the way to the other side. Now click back to the previous screen.
Wait. Before we leave this screen, the inside right turn lane is not signalized. And the middle lane is.
Both of them are signalized for pedestrians.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
The inside lane would only stop if it's the pedestrian actuates the signal.
Got it. Thank you. And so now I'm ready for you to go west. Thank you.
You want the next slide?
Yep.
That's the previous slide, yes.
Okay. Wait.
I'm just trying to understand it before I ask my question.
And then basically this one, you would come across the other side and then you would cross this, cross the ramp here. Now this movement is not signalized because it's a low volume movement coming from the west.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. I just wasn't positive.
And then it would continue out and it would be end at the end of the project limits. I know the county's got recommendations for a trail along the Moores Creek, but we're not working on this section of the road, so we wouldn't include that as part of this project.
Okay. And my last clarification, and then I'll think about what actual questions I have, is the turning movement volumes. Obviously, we all know what the dominant turning movements are, but that same ramp, you're northbound on the bypass, you get off on the exit to Fontaine. This is before you're routing the I-64 traffic here. What the volume of that left turn to go out toward Buckingham Circle, right now, today, before any of this, what is there a comparison of that? Do you have that turning movement data? And then I'd ask the similar question. I got another question when that's over.
Yes, we do. Hold on. I didn't pull that screen up. I've got a preliminary report. Let's see.
I do have that Word document that you sent, the assumptions.
I don't think it's in that document. Let me look real quick. I have another document.
I just don't want to. I assume that the volume of that turning movement is super low until.
Yeah, it is really low. That's making that westbound movement. I just don't have that number off the top of my head. I thought I had it open.
Yeah, because once you create the need for that left, by diverting the traffic that's trying to go west on 64, then the volume will go way up.
Yes.
Okay. And then my last clarification question, and this is in the other direction, because I'm not that interested in like the actual number, just relative number is really what I see.
Yeah, it's less than 100 in the peak hour. Okay. I mean, I want to say it's like 30 or 40 vehicles.
So now I'm going to jump over to the other side. You're coming down 29 South. You exit at the Fontaine exit, and you want to turn left to go to the city or Charlottesville. That is an unsignalized left turn at that.
Yes, it's right now. The thing about that movement now is they have to wait for the westbound traffic that wants to get on the interchange. Go down south on 29, they have to wait for all those vehicles to clear. This would take those left turning vehicles out of the equation. So the only conflicting vehicles would be any vehicles that would be going out towards or the reservoir.
Okay, can we put that up on the screen?
It's go back one slide. Yes. See, you're only basically this southbound left turn is only, their only conflict is with the westbound traffic, which is a low volume.
Okay, so you know, I'm gonna be that car sitting at the bottom of that ramp. I see a car is in your picture sitting at the bottom of that ramp. The condition of that shared use path, will it have railings and stuff so that somebody couldn't say, ooh, I'm not supposed to turn left into this little slot. I need to get one more over.
It's got a barrier, a Jersey barrier.
Okay, okay.
If you go back to the next slide, hit the next slide.
Hold on.
Right here in the middle, you see you've got the paths in the center,
I see.
and you've got barrier on both sides of it.
Got it. Okay, thank you. I'm just, because your brain just is like, oh, I'm not supposed to go into that little slot.
Yeah, it's different, but we're trying to do everything we can to protect both the pedestrians and guide the motorists to where they need to go.
And everything's sized for tractor trailers.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so those are all my clarification questions. Thank you.
Because I know we had a lot, especially with the U-turning movement that was proposed at Ray Hunt, that's sized so that larger vehicles can make that maneuver easily. It's also signalized as part of that intersection so that they will be able to make that maneuver even for the slower moving larger vehicles.
Yeah, I guess with this up on the screen, somebody coming down that ramp from the bypass northbound and they get themselves in the inside lane and then think to themselves, oopsie, I got to get over to that U-turn lane. They'll have that much space to weave over there.
From the very inside lane, it's exclusively for folks going to Ray Hunt.
Right, but is there a physical barrier that keeps them from weaving over?
There's probably going to be delineators of some sort that would prohibit most people from making that maneuver. I mean, physically, we're not going to put a Jersey barrier up, but there will be some sort of delineation beyond just the stripe on the road.
Okay. So we might have to be prepared for somebody being channeled all the way up into Fontaine, up to Ray C. Hunt Drive, and then have to get themselves.
Well, part of the concerns that we've seen at this intersection, especially at the northbound ramp interchange, is that the queuing from Ray Hunt backs all the way up here, and the people coming down that ramp dart over and they cut the people coming from the southbound ramp off. And that's a daily occurrence out there. So by alternating the signal at this location, that movement, they'll be able to flow, alternating with the southbound people coming from the west versus the people coming from the north, or from the people coming from the west versus people coming from the south.
Right.
Sorry.
So they'll be on the ramp when they'll cut somebody on the ramp.
Well, like I said, it forces them into that center lane, and then both the vehicles will be merging into that one lane, and then you can get into the right turn lane to go into Ray Hunt.
Okay.
So you won't have that weave anymore because it'll be a stop with a stoplight, signalized for both those movements.
Oh, okay. I thought I heard the inside lane was not signalized.
The southbound ramp to eastbound, the ramp's not signalized, but it's signalized here at this interchange.
I got it. Okay, thank you.
So they will alternate who goes where first. So.
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
So our next question, I'm going to read the chat box question, and then Julia Monolith, you'll be after this question from the chat box. This question is from Karen Measles, and the question is the rightmost lane from 29 north to Fontaine eastbound a free-flowing lane of traffic Will there be a fixed median between the two right turn lanes from Fontaine Ave into Fontaine Park?
It's, like I said, it's going to have some sort of delineation along that whole length. So it will be free flow except when pedestrians or bicyclists want to cross the ramp. Other than that, it's going to be free flow right down to Ray Hunt. Now, once you get to Ray Hunt, you'll be controlled by a signal because of the left turn off of Fontaine Avenue into Ray Hunt. You'll have to stop for that movement. But other than that, it'll be free flow onto Ray Hunt.
The next question is from Julia Monolith. You have your hand raised, so you can go ahead.
Yes, it's Julia Monteith.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Chuck, I wonder if you could, if you all could arrange it such that Chuck has control and he could walk us through showing with the hand the movements that he covered at the beginning of the meeting, because this is a very non-traditional intersection design and it's hard to understand even if you understand it. But it's very hard to understand when somebody's explaining it, but not showing where the flows actually are. So would there be a way to do that so that the cursor is following the description that Chuck is giving so people understand a little bit more directly what is being designed?
Chuck, are you able to do that?
I don't know if you can share the screen with me.
Sandy, do you know if I can do that? Auto accept all requests. All right, I think I have to make you a participant. Chuck, I can do this. Just might take a sec. Okay. I'm gonna make you a participant, a panelist, sorry. So I'm promoting you to panelist, and now I am, you can request control over the mouse.
Okay, host has promoted you. You're using your audio. Okay.
I think I gave you control.
Okay, can anybody see my cursor moving around?
No. On your top bar, there's remote controlled. Oh, it does say that you're controlling it.
It may be a delay in the feed. That could be part of the problem.
Hey Chuck, this is Justin. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I mean, obviously it is a very confusing type of configuration to just look at on a drawing. And if it would help afterwards, I could create a series of drawings just highlighting the different movements and how you would need to make them, if that would be helpful.
Julia, would that be helpful?
Yes, I think that would be very helpful. If it's possible during this conversation, when people have questions, if the person who does have control of the cursor could show what's being expressed as Chuck describes it, because I know from personal experience, it's a bit hard to do the audio and the visual at the same time. That would be really helpful because it's a very unusual intersection design.
Yeah, it combines two different types of intersections. You've got the U-turn movement, and then you've got the crossover movement, which are parts of different types of intersection improvements that, in this case, work well together. But I'll try to do what I can to show you all what I'm talking about as we go forward.
Okay,
Yeah,
and one other quick request is, could you describe overall what you're trying to achieve? We didn't really cover that. We just went directly into describing the actual movements, but I don't know that we've had an overview of what we're trying to achieve with this new intersection design. I mean, what is the problem we're trying to solve?
Okay, there's several and I've noticed this for a very long time. First of all, at this interchange, I'll get to the 64 stuff that I talked about earlier in a minute. There's several issues with regards to the 29 northbound. Right now, that volume queues up significantly and to the point where it backs out onto 64. So part of this project, we've got one piece that's getting already built now that's widening these ramps on the northbound approach to provide some capacity capacity improvements. The other thing is there's a lot of weave because just to the east, it goes to one lane in each direction where you go into the city. You've got a lot of volume that's going into Ray Hunt. So there's a lot of people that want to go from this right turn lane into the middle lane, which goes into the city. And a lot of people coming south on 29 that want to go into Ray Hunt, and they have to get over in the right lane. So it creates a significant weave between those two lanes, between these two intersections. A lot of times in the morning, the signal at Ray Hunt causes this traffic to back up significantly. And this volume coming off the northbound ramp to the, a lot of times it'll cut the vehicles that are coming in from the west that were coming off the southbound ramp. It'll cut them right off and they'll go because they want to get on that in that middle lane to go into the city. So that's one of the issues that we're trying to solve with this. One of the other issues is how do we get pedestrians from this side to the other side of the bridge safely? We can make the geometry work and we can do a lot of stuff with the roadway, but to get the pedestrians across, we're very limited as to where we can put them. If you go, let me go back to the other slide.
Can you do that?
Let's see.
Oh yeah, I don't have control anymore.
Yeah, I don't see
Oh,
it
there's
on.
your mouse. You got
Yeah, I
it.
see my mouse, but I don't see the
You have to hit
kitchen
escape.
screen piece.
You have to
Oh,
hit escape on your keyboard.
gotcha. Hold on. It's not working.
I'm gonna take it back for 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, hold on. There. And now I'm gonna give it back to you.
Okay. There it goes.
So you should have control, Chuck.
I got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, that one.
Okay. To get to the other side of the bridge, there's piers on both sides, and this median underneath the bridge is really narrow. So that's what the limiting factor is. We looked at running the trail on the outside, both sides of the road, but without making significant improvements to the bridge itself, we can't put the trail outside of the piers. So that means we have to put it within that section of the road. And that's why we chose the median as the most, the DDI had it in the same location. So we proposed it back in the same place. So that was the second item that was a critical item. The third item was the U-turns from the trucks from 64. Like I said before, the original concept for the interchange at 64 was too expensive. So we looked at some smaller, less expensive projects to try to address those concerns. And routing those U-turn traffic through the interchange here seemed like the most inexpensive way to do that. And that's why we came up with the Diverging Diamond last round for Smart Scale, because it would accommodate those trucks making that maneuver. It also was too expensive. So we came back to looked at other options, and this seemed to be the one that addressed all those concerns at a much significantly lower cost.
Chuck, this is Troy. One other thing, item that we were trying to address was the southbound ramp conflict with the westbound movement, the queue that develops on the southbound ramp. We've greatly reduced that conflict, reducing the queue that will develop on the southbound ramp coming off of 29.
Yeah, this Becca, it looks like you've also, the goal looks to me like it was to emphasize the 3 turning movements that are most dominant, which is northbound bypass to eastbound Fontaine, and that ramp that the gentleman just suggested, the one southbound bypass to left turn on Fontaine, and westbound Fontaine to southbound on the bypass. That, like, those are the 3 most dominant turning movements, I suspect. I mean, I don't have numbers, but I suspect that you were trying to find a solution that continued to support those 3 very dominant turning movements.
Yeah, yes, that is correct. And that's why we ended up with, we looked at that as the critical thing. And we try to address those dominant movements the best way we can. And that's one of the things that led to this concept.
Okay. And, okay, good. That's what I thought I was seeing. I did want to just point out that this intersection doesn't just have its day-to-day dominance. It's in this configuration, it would also have that I-64 loop-de-loop, but also imagine that on a football game day, how this area loads in and then loads back out after a football game. You know, there are some lane reversals and such to favor the outbound post-game on Fontaine. So I think it still works. I think it doesn't compromise those few times a year where those lanes are managed like that.
Being that it's signalized, it gives us a lot more control, especially for that westbound to southbound movement. Just hold that signal green or red for the eastbound traffic, and that's a free flow movement all the way to the 64.
Yeah, but and the only thing you're holding back are the people that are trying to go from the bypass to westbound 64, and usually on a Saturday in the 1 hour post game, you know, that won't queue up past the ramp probably.
Even during the worst peak periods, we didn't see that ramp backing up. We gave it as much capacity as we could for that U-turn storage. So we didn't really see that as a concern, even with the 2040 volume.
Okay. I'm talking about post football game volume. So I'm sure there's not enough to back it all the way up during those hours. Because they're usually, like, at the earliest, they'd be a Saturday around 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday, all the way up until midnight. You know, there'll be just 1 hour, where if you want that free flow post game out to 64, you'd have to hold that traffic on the ramp.
Yeah, on a Saturday, I don't think that's a heavy movement on the weekends. We don't have that data, so we didn't analyze it.
Okay.
But it could be, we could look at it if we have the data.
Okay. Well, I'm just, I know we don't want to plan for the 6 days a year, but just to imagine how we would use this, you know, how the region would be able to use this configuration to relieve post football game traffic. And I think it's still, I added, you know, without the benefit of any data, I mean, I do think it would, you have lots of capacity to hold that traffic on the ramp while you let the football traffic go.
I mean, there's another, I mean, we could actually, if it's significant, you could use both the westbound lanes and actually just put at the west end of the south, where the southbound ramps are, you could actually put cones across and direct that extra westbound volume onto the ramp at this location also.
Yep.
It's not, we didn't design for necessarily for that, but it could be easily accommodated.
Yeah, that's all I was trying to do, is imagine how it could be used best for the region once you're unloading all that football traffic.
And that could be a minor detail that we look at during the design phase if it's funded.
Yep. Thank you.
Hold on, I need to take the screen back to see the questions. Okay, so I don't see anybody else with their hand up. And I see in the chat, Peter Krebs is asking, so it seems the downside to this versus the Diverging Diamond is that 2 turning movements, northbound 29 to westbound Fontaine and westbound Fontaine to 29 north, require that U-turn, which is a new complication. Are there other potential downsides?
It's the eastbound Fontaine movement, as a correction, for what his question is. Those are the only 2, like I said, the turning movement for the U-turn movement at Ray Hunt will introduce an additional phase to that signal, and it will that will have to be accommodated, but it's a low volume of traffic, so we in our analysis didn't see where that had a significant impact. And that would be the only other item that might be a downside. Other than those people having to travel that extra distance to make those maneuvers.
Okay, so the next question is from Kevin McDermott. Go ahead, Kevin.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. I just have a question about the volume analysis, I guess, in future. And I apologize, I had to jump off for a second, so I hope this wasn't already asked. But my concern is that there is a fair amount of new development potential on the west side of Fontaine here, or down Reservoir Road. As you may know, we have the Regent School, which was approved recently for 180 students, and then there is also a large office or PUD development, planned unit development on the north side, right there at Fontaine, just past Buckingham Circle. With that additional volume, is there any concern for, I guess, the 2 movements, if you're heading northbound 29 and you want to go west on Fontaine past the interchange, that means you have to go up around that U-turn, and is that going to be problematic with additional volumes? And then also the coming off the ramp from southbound 29, and being able to make that left like you're going into the city, if there is additional volumes going through that intersection heading west and coming back from west, is that going to be a problem? And one thing about that one is, you know, we currently, it's a single lane exit southbound 29 to Fontaine, and people have been making that a 2-lane exit because they want to be able to make a right without having to wait for the left turning volumes to clear. Would that be something that we could add to this to go ahead and make that a 2-lane exit there so that those people could continue to make movement?
Yes and no. The westbound left turn volume, or westbound volume, would be significantly reduced so there wouldn't be as many conflict points. And so the southbound traffic should flow a lot more, not free flow, but with less conflicting volume to oppose it. So it should operate fairly well because we're taking out a lot of that westbound to southbound left turning volume, which is currently part of the conflict problem right now. Like I said, the northbound left turn movements, we factored in a higher growth rate for the volume west of 64 or west of 29. So we took, we show more volume coming from that direction. I know you talked about the Regent School. I think I'm not positive, but my understanding is that the as part of their proffers, they were required to have their peak be off the normal peak of flow of traffic of the roadway. So hopefully that will not be a factor in impacting this this concept. We didn't think it was, even with the additional traffic, from what our analysis shows. Adding a right turn lane, part of the reason for the increased cost of the DDI was adding that additional lane on the ramp. It triggers the need for a retaining wall and sound wall along that ramp frontage, and we tried to eliminate as much of that extra cost as we could possibly do with this design, because we wanted to try to reduce the cost so it would be fundable. So hopefully that addresses your questions.
So I see Rebecca White has her hand open, but there's a question, I think it's from Chip to Kevin in the chat. Since this is a project requested by Albemarle County, what are your thoughts on this configuration to meet the county's concerns with this area?
If you'd like me to respond, I mean, removing that left turn across southbound 29 onto the westbound 64 ramp is really important for us. Like as Chuck mentioned, it is a very dangerous location, and so with this, I think with this alternative, because it does address that problem, I think that, and I want to get with my supervisors obviously to discuss it, but I think that's a big benefit to this overall. I am a little, as I mentioned, a little concerned about that southbound exit ramp not being addressed in this alternative necessarily, which has problematic, except for it does remove some of that volume, as Chuck mentioned, the through volume, the left turning volume out of that equation. So perhaps that will address the current problem there, but I am a little concerned about the continued development out on the Fontaine Avenue on the west side of this interchange and Reservoir Road. But I don't know. I mean, my concerns are really the confusion of that crossover at the intersection. I hope that people can get used to it, and I hope that it addresses the problem. But I guess I think right at this point, I'm willing to go ahead and try and move forward with it if the board still supports this.
So the next question is from Rebecca White. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Thank you. What is the big blue box?
That's a potential stormwater management pond. Anytime we do a project, we have to look at how we're going to do stormwater to address the impacts that it's creating. And that's where we identified an area for a potential pond.
Okay, thank you. I just couldn't quite read it on my screen. Thank you.
So we have a question in the chat box, and then I'll call on Diantha McKeel. The next question is from Bill Palmer. And the question is, does this reduce the width of and/or move the median in front of Fontaine Research Park as it exists now? Does the U-turn bulb out require a significant cut into the hillside on North Fontaine?
It does require a cut. If you go to the, let me see, I can do it. Let's see.
You can't, hold on.
Hold on, I can do it. Let me,
Oh,
I think.
yeah, you can. You should be able to.
There it goes. Okay. Well, it's not letting me switch slides.
Oh, hold on.
It's not letting me switch.
I think you should be able to now.
All right. There it goes. It does. And right now you can see there's a trail. The Ravenna Trail has a portion of their trail up on the northern side. And we're going to have to locate, and this is going to be additional right of way, and we're going to relocate the trail around that area so that it's maintained during the project and after the project. I mean, it may require, I have to ask Justin, is there a retaining wall at this location?
We can't be entirely sure right now because we don't have a survey, but the assumption right now is we would try to do it just with the cut slope.
It's, I mean, in a point and road.
Hopefully avoid
knock a
retaining
flood,
wall.
yeah. It's very intensive here downtown.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, Chuck, I mean, more or less for the bulb out. I was just curious with the median as well, because I know that thinking about like people kind of, I mean, it's probably not too many people, but there is some movement of people that go across Fontaine to get to the trails on O Hill, and that because where the Ravenna Trail exits the Fontaine property,
Yeah.
kind of a refuge spot for people, the median, to wait until the traffic is safe so they can go across. And I just wasn't sure if that median was going to remain or if it was going to be.
You will have a raised median, but it's only going to be, I think this is 4 foot wide. I'm not positive, but you're not going to have the grass median wide grass median that's there now because we are using it for that extended turn lane, the U-turn bay. But they can walk down to Ray Hunt and cross.
Right. I mean, that's what you probably should do now. It's just once you get across, then because of the grades, you know, it's just so tempting to like dart across the road there if you're on the RTF. So
Yeah, because it comes down right there at almost right at the interchange.
Yeah. But that,
So
yeah, that answers my.
The next question is from Diantha McKeel. Go ahead, Diantha.
Hey, Chuck, this has been a great presentation and I really appreciate your good drawings and everything. Your pictures are great. And thank you for this. I have a couple of questions. And if I missed it, I apologize, but what has been VDOT's experience in using this? Sounded like to me this is kind of a, maybe you haven't had a lot of experience. I'm just trying to figure out.
It's new. It's very innovative. I think there's only one other location in the state where we have a CFI, and I think it's down in the Tidewater area. But they're very effective, and there's a number of them around the country, and they're very efficient and in moving vehicles. And separating out, especially where you have these significant left turning vehicle volumes. This is like a hybrid DDI or Divergent Diamond Interchange because you are crossing those left turns over. It's just by segregating out some of the lower volume movements, It has the benefits that you might see with a restricted turning move, restricted crossing U-turn movement, because you're relocating those left turn movements somewhere else. But it accommodates your through volumes and your primary movements at this interchange very effectively.
So what I'm hearing is that while it's innovative for our area, you've had at least some track record with this, and it seems to do what it's intended to do.
Yes.
Great. That's all. That's good, because you keep doing the same thing every time and expecting a different result. Sometimes it's good to be a little innovative, and I get that. And I have just one more question, or maybe it's more of a comment. I heard you say attenuators at one point during your discussion. And to separate the...
Oh, yes. We type, basically they're type 1 delineators. It's like a flexible post that you put, you have them out at 53 and 20 intersection on that one right turn radius. It's just a white post that's affixed to the pavement to separate the lanes.
So Joel D'Annunzio is smiling somewhere at me because I never cease to talk about this. This is only Diantha McKeel, but those attenuators I find just, if they're the same, are they the same ones as those yellow ones we see everywhere now?
You could see they come in different colors, yellow or white. Yes.
And I guess this is more of a comment, but there's got to be something better than those. I recognize they're inexpensive and they probably don't do a lot of damage, except they turn into litter. They're littering the 250 bypass right now where they were located, right? Because people hit them and then they turn into litter. Is that what other dots are using as well? I guess maybe you can't answer this right now, but I just really wonder, is it that type of attenuator or a Jersey barrier, and there's nothing in between?
This gives a way to separate out the vehicles. If you use like a fixed barrier, then you've got to provide a lot more separation between the motor vehicle and the barrier. This provides, it's not something that people could still cross it, but they're less likely to do it. We're not saying don't do it, but this basically guides the people to do the right thing as opposed to trying to switch lanes that causes more problems in congestion with that weaving movement that we have experienced there today.
Yeah, and I understand. And it's just, I guess my comment only is, it just seems like there should be something between that option and a concrete Jersey barrier. Because these really don't last very well, and they really just turn into, anyway, they can be all over the place as people hit them. And
yeah, I understand. I'll defer to Troy if he's got any suggestions.
I just wondered what other dots are doing, if this is what the standard is, or if there are some innovative other options besides these tall plastic things that, I don't know.
Well, the only thing with those it gives a better barrier than just striping. If you put basically anything else there, we need to widen the road, which potentially means more right-of-way. It's definitely going to be more asphalt. With these delineators, you can just put those right on the striping, so you don't need to make the typical section any wider. That's really the reason that you use those. If money was no object, then yes, we could certainly do something else. But we all know money is an object.
And that was my question. I was just wondering what other dots were doing across the country, and if there was other options rather than these plastic things. But that's enough said about it. Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions? You can raise your hand. If you're on the phone, hit *9. Okay, I see Julia, go ahead. Yeah.
This is probably more of a comment than a question. just a couple of things in regard to the westbound movement onto Fontaine, where one has to do a U-turn in order to achieve that. We have a couple of concerns with that. One is just seems very convoluted if you're trying to go west. Seems like a lot of extra steps and maybe dangerous in some ways. And the other thing is that I can provide more information to VDOT on this, but UVA has completed a new master plan for Fontaine. And the concept there is to shift some of the ambulatory visits that are now in the health system, which is a very congested area at JPA and West Main, out to Fontaine to make it easier for patients to access and also to reduce the congestion in the area of the traditional health system. And so there's going to be increased volumes of cars going to Fontaine, and I just wonder how that's going to work with all of the western bound movements also having to be routed in this direction. And so we'll just want to understand everything a little bit better, but those are our concerns currently.
Thank you. I mean, we'll look at it and take that under advisement. I mean, we looked at the growth along the corridor and tried to estimate what we felt was reasonable volume projected out to the future. And with what we were looking at, it seemed to be, it still works reasonably well through 2040 before we started to see any kind of reduced delay or increased delay that we might have a problem with. But if it's different than what we had forecasted, we can take that into consideration and see if it'll still work and from a sensitivity perspective.
Okay, thank you. We'd appreciate that.
Any other questions? You can raise your hand or type in the chat feature. It doesn't look like there's any other questions. If you have comments, you can send them to Kevin or myself, or they get them to Kevin. You can email them or call us. Do you have anything else, Chuck?
No, unless somebody has some questions, or you can reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns, and I'll get you the information that you need.
All right, well, thanks everybody for coming. We really appreciate your engagement and questions and comments. And yeah, just email myself, Kevin, or Chuck if you have any questions or comments.
And thank you for holding this session.
You're welcome.
Thank you. This was great.
Okay, I'm gonna stop recording and